All right, welcome everybody to episode 25 of the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. I am Sub1KD, joined as always by my illustrious partner J007 TV. Jay, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Can't complain. I am fighting through the rest of this cold, so please ignore the raspiness of my voice this week. It's not my mic this time, it's just me. I actually started coming down with this while we recorded our last episode about halfway through. I started feeling it coming on and then struggled through that. And then it's just been a week of like misery. So, but finally, feel like I'm on the upswing. So, I will probably talk myself out of the upswing over the next hour and a half as we go through.
That's the thing about having young kids, man. I never really ever got sick until I started having young kids. I had little kids, and then it wasn't so much with my son. That dude, I think in 15 years, I think I can remember him being sick like twice, maybe. I think he's the only one that didn't catch COVID, or if he did, he showed no signs. And then my daughter, though, she's just a walking issue. I mean. So yeah, I feel you, man. When you have little kids like that, it's tough to stay healthy all the time. But also the other great thing is you're not going to be in the middle of Noah's torrential downpour this week.
Yeah, we have about a 2-hour window, so we need to get this episode recorded because it has been torrential all night, and it'll be torrential starting at about 11 o'clock. So let's get it done.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, it's been
all right.
Big storm rolling through. Thunder last night. Thunder. We don't get a lot of thunderstorms. So when we get one, it's kind of like ooh, thunder. Unless it's in the middle of the summer, and then it's okay. Now we're just going to be burning for like 3 weeks. So welcome to California. But yeah, the week again. We got some a lot of news, a lot of stuff going on in the industry as a whole. I'm going to toss one more bullet point in there. I'll bring it up a little later to the schedule.
Sure.
But, it didn't start out great for the industry as a whole. We had a bunch of layoffs again. And so I'm going to preface this with, we feel for everybody who gets laid off. I've been through tech layoffs myself, so I understand the frustration and the lack of what feels like the lack of control over your own life because of these things. So, we both, really feel for everybody who gets let go in these situations and hope you land on your feet. We've got a couple of ideas kicking around of, hopefully we can help some of you guys get some attention and going forward. We'll talk more about that in a later episode. But, it was, this time it was Sony got hit, right? Shut down a couple of studios. Who else got hit? Somebody else got hit.
EA,
that's right.
Yeah, I think they laid off like 5%.
Yeah. And here's the thing about gaming, right? Gaming is still tech industry, right? It's still the same kind of thing. It's a little bit insulated because people will spend a little bit more on a game that they like to play rather than, they'll spend on whatever tech, little nicety you can get right now. But it's still the same industry, right? You're still subject to ongoing success. And when the economy slows down, when the tech industry slows down, gaming slows down with it. And I think that's something a lot of people don't think about, going into the field, right? You think, oh, I'm jumping in, and it's one of those industries that's too big to fail. But like anything else, tech, profit's got a profit, and we're coming off of a huge boom with we're coming off of a huge boom with from the pandemic in the gaming industry where everybody just played nonstop, and then at the end of the day, I think we hit that slowdown where a lot of companies overhired, overpromised, overdesigned, overthought their games, and it hasn't necessarily been sustainable. And I think that's driving a lot of these layoffs at the end of the day.
What's funny is, it's not funny. I was listening to the Drop Shot yesterday, And one of the things that they talked about, which actually makes sense to me, is that, you know, during the pandemic, everyone was working at home, and
Mm-hmm.
they think that part of this might be because the efficiency levels when you have your staff working at home are not the same, which we've kind of covered that. So they had to kind of overhire and maybe hire more people to do kind of the same things because of the efficiency of you know, employees working at home. And now that everybody's going back to work, they're kind of, quote, trimming the fat, if you will.
It's very possible, you know, and it also could be that they've realized that um, their workforce is too spread out geographically, and so if you're going to focus on an in office in office work, and you have your workforce, you let them go remote and you let them spread, right? A lot of companies, they let you move out of state, right? They assume that this pandemic thing would go on for longer than it did, and now they're stuck with, you know, some chunk of their workforce all over the place. And so a lot of these layoffs may be targeting people resistant to working, you know, to going back to the office, which, you know, is kind of messed up, especially if they promise that you'd be able to, you know, to work remotely permanently, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we want you to come back to the office, and people go like, well, yeah, but we moved to Ohio. That's a long commute.
Yeah, and you know, you and I talked about this a few episodes ago, and I mean, you did make a valid point when you were talking about how you went in, I believe it was to the engineering department, and you know, you guys had been having an issue rolling something out, and then you got on the whiteboard, and then that way, because you guys were in the same room together, you were able to help him understand exactly what the issue was, that you
Yeah.
were looking at. So, you know, that's ever since you said that to me, I get that. That, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me as to, you know, that could be the case here, right?
Yeah. And you know, it's the thing of like, sometimes that's like super important, and other times, you know, you don't need it. I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy to be in, where not every role has to be in office, right? Like if you're an accountant approving paperwork and it's all digital, right? Like you probably don't need a desk in an office. But if you're, you know, and there are some people, like, look, there are some people who just can't focus at home, right? Like if they don't have a very strict office regimen to be in, you know, they'll get distracted by all kinds of stuff. And
Sure.
I know people do that, because I knew a lot of people that were working from home, and I would pull up, you know, I would pull up the Xbox, you know, midday, and I'd be like, huh, interesting to see you online.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a buddy. McGregor was telling me a story about an employee he had heard about that was off for a couple days or called in for a couple days, and then it turns out that employee, it and the timing of it was right around when season 1 dropped for Call of Duty. Yeah. So yeah, no, I
Yeah.
get that. And you know, I during that 2 years when I worked at home, I got to be honest, I would have streams up. I would have like my work computer, and I would have you know, my laptop up. But
Yep.
I didn't play during the day. I do that occasionally on a late Friday, you know, at 4:45 I might hop on or something like that. But even to this day, I refuse to hop on and play during the day. I just don't feel right about it unless I'm off, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just
Well, and
kind of
it's like,
the way I feel, but not everybody does.
you know, from my point of view, it's like, look, you know, if you have a dedicated lunch break, you have like a lunch hour, and you're at home, right? Like that's your time. And so I understand, you know, there's benefits to it, and there's, you know, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing overall, but at the same time, if your lunch hour is 2.5 hours long because you're playing Warzone, you know, that's not necessarily the best from a corporate standpoint, right? You know, you do lose that productivity. And, you know, and look, here's the thing,
Right.
you know, I've got a wife, I've got kids, right? If I'm home and I'm trying to get work done and I am in the house, there's a million and one little things that take my attention away from what I'm doing. And it's,
Sure.
you know, kids want to, kids need help with something. They need to reach something. Wife just needs you to get something off the top shelf, right? Can you help me carry this? Can you help me lift this? Can you move this, right? A million little
Groceries.
interruptions. Yeah, groceries. Million interruptions. So, and it's not always going to be a good setup. And so I get it from a corporate standpoint. From an employee standpoint, I have no interest in ever going back to work in an office, 9 to 5 again. It's just, to me, I prioritize being with being home for the family and being available if things come up, and living where we live and doing what we do. Things come up frequently. Like I spent a good hour yesterday chasing a cow through the neighbor's property. And so it's kind of like stuff like that has to be dealt with kind of immediately. Means it's good to be home for it. So it gets filed under the is what it is. But I think I feel like that's a good chunk of what's going on, in addition to the general economy in and of itself, and these companies are kind of restructuring how they're dealing with it. But kind of a bummer. 2024 is picking up where 2023 left off, and just being a general bummer for tech in general and for gaming in specific. So so that's unfortunate, absolutely. But I'll tell you this: not everything is unfortunate right now. Some cool news coming out of coming out of the Call of Duty scene, sort of, is Toys for Bob Studio, which Spyro the Dragon and what was their other big one? Skylanders and
Crash.
Crash Bandicoot. Really, really fun, lighthearted games are their specialty. It's what they're known for. But they got pulled into doing Call of Duty, which to me always seemed like a really weird fit. They did a couple of maps. What were their maps? I can't remember. But they've done some maps. And their maps were enjoyable. But I don't think that it fits. I don't think that they were ever a great fit for Call of Duty. I think it was one of those things of Activision needed just all hands on deck to manage the amount of work they've given themselves. And I think the studio, to be honest, has suffered for it. I know they had big layoff. They took a big hit in the layoffs, but they are spinning out to an independent studio once again. So they will no longer be an Activision owned studio. They will be their own thing, in charge of their own destiny going forward. And I think that's great. I think that's a huge benefit for the industry. More independent studios able to work on things that they excel at. And I think it's a win. What do you think?
No, I think that's great. I think that them being able to focus on the things that they're really good at are that's obviously a positive. I mean, those other games are nothing like Call of Duty. I think you're right. I think that basically because of the success that Warzone had during the pandemic, and it's not just because of the pandemic, it's because it was actually a good game and fun, and a lot of people like to play it. Um, they got roped into doing something that they weren't that wasn't in their wheelhouse, right? So now
Yeah.
they're able to go out and independently, make decisions that are best for their studio and best for their player base. So I'm excited for those folks. They are looking to partner in the future with Microsoft, maybe on some things, and I think Microsoft's going to let them do what they do, and
Yeah.
not try to put them on Halo. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
I think so too. And I think when it comes down to it, I think Microsoft is going to need to um, kind of backfill some of this Call of Duty work from their own assets and not pull other studios in. And I think there's a lot of stuff that they could send to their programming farms that Activision has to deal with, like some of the nuts and bolts level work that Activision takes on because they have to, but isn't necessarily the most equipped company to do it, and that's why they keep pulling in all these support studios to do everything Call of Duty and pull them away from the projects that they're actually focused want to be focused on and are best at.
Well, and if you look at like just so this is kind of the second round of layoffs for this industry, right? Like there was already more in January, and some of those positions, unfortunately, or departments may have just been redundancies anyway. And
Yeah.
overlap with other studios, and it just makes sense to restructure. Because at the end of the day, Activision was purchased by Microsoft because Microsoft wants to make a profit. For good or bad, that's just the way it is. And I hate that. I hate that for the people, but it would make sense if they're looking at their overall expenditures and payroll expenses and things like that, that if they already have people on payroll that are doing what other people do, I can see why they would do what they do. I don't agree with it for the people. I feel like there could have been some other kind of way, but I understand it.
Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, we have another studio that actually is starting out and headed by a Call of Duty alum, and this one has you particularly excited. Why is that?
I'm excited because it's David Vandahar. So he left Treyarch a couple, 2 or 3 months ago. And we've all been, those of us who know who he is, we've all been waiting to see where he's going to land because he's going to land somewhere. He was basically Treyarch's Ted Timmons,
Mm-hmm.
if you really think about it. He rolled out Blackout, and had a whole lot of success with that title, although it wasn't cross-plat, so the success will not be equivalent to what Warzone is, but it was successful in its own right. It functioned properly. They addressed issues quickly. He was the face of it, and he was the face of a lot of the Treyarch titles that people have known to love, have come to love. So yeah, it's very exciting. So the studio that he formed was Bullet Farm. And what they're going to be working on is a first person co op shooter, I think, first and foremost. We don't have a lot of the details on exactly, what their first title is going to be, because I have to assume there's going to be multiple titles. They're probably not just going to focus on just one. And he's also in the process of assembling his team. I don't know exactly, who those team members are, but I can tell you any team that is led by David Vandahar is going to be a good team because he is a legend in the industry, and the fans love him. So I'm excited to see what he and that group can come up with, and you know if it gives Call of Duty some competition, then I'm all for it because we've talked about this multiple times. We need more competition in these types of games because what
Mm-hmm.
that's going to do is that's going to force each of these studios to be on top of their game, no pun intended, and produce good products that work.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the future there for sure.
Well, one of the things, especially when you talk about competition, one of the things that I think is super is become critical for the survivability of a franchise, and especially a new franchise or an existing one, to be honest, is providing more than the standard deathmatch style gameplay. Allegedly we have the imminent release of X Defiant, which will compete head to head against Call of Duty's 6v6 multiplayer offering. But their launch, the one of the big knocks and pushbacks against that being being able to survive long term is a lack of a battle royale or extraction mode or some other mode that is kind of like long term engaging in the way that Warzone and a traditional battle royale is. And I think there's a lot of validity to that pushback and to that complaint, and to the point that now Battlefield is stepping into the ring with their allegedly in their new their upcoming release. They are rumored to have a new battle royale mode launching free to play with the next Battlefield game. Now I know Battlefield is a bit more. You're a bit more read into it. You've played more, right?
Oh
Jay?
yeah, I've played a few of the titles. I really got my start with Battlefield and Battlefield 4. So just like Blackout, it's my favorite version of Battlefield because I feel like everything after that, they did Battlefield 4 and then they came out with Battlefield Hardline, which took out like the military aspect of it and it was like a cops
Mm-hmm.
and robbers thing. I didn't care for it. I played it for about a month and I was like, I'm out. I went back
Yeah.
to Battlefield 4. I wanted traditional weapons, traditional vehicles, and traditional enemies. Those kind of things. So I went back to that. Then they circled back to World War One with Battlefield One, and then they went to Battlefield 5, which was weird because they went one then 5. But
Yeah.
and that was the World War II game, and they tried to do a battle royale, but the problem is so doing a battle royale is one thing, but doing a battle royale with time period that people don't have an appetite for anymore is why Firestorm failed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they did it with World War II era weapons, those kind of things. It
Yeah.
wasn't, and if you put that up head to head against Warzone, it wasn't
Well.
going to do well. And go ahead.
Oh yeah, and especially since because that released during like around Cold War, right, or
I
before.
think so. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. That was not. Did not let. That was not the. It was not the time for it, and I still think we're not. We're not ready for World War II to come back again for a while.
I agree with you. I mean, look at Call of Duty. They tried to do that with Caldera, and it was not well received at all.
Especially when they put
Not just
laser
because.
guns in there.
Oh, I know, right? Oh, and then they threw in Godzilla and King Kong, and I mean, it was just not really a good era of Call of
Stop
Duty.
knocking
But
Godzilla. That was
as
the best mode ever.
I'm sure, yeah, and you like Krampus too. So think about this. So what they did with Battlefield 2042 is it became almost like a hero shooter where each operator had abilities and this and that. And people didn't like it because Battlefield has traditionally had like 4 classes where you have roles, whether that's medic, assault, engineer, those kind of roles. I'm trying to remember what the other role was. It might have been Intel or something like that. I can't remember. I never played it. But you had those kind of roles, and then you had specific things that you could do with those
Mm-hmm.
roles. So that's vastly different from what they rolled out with 2042, and it was not well received. And they tried to kind of retroactively go back and fix that. And from what I understand, 2042 is a lot better now than it was because that launch was absolutely terrible. They tried to out Call of Duty, and they failed
Yeah.
miserably. Like they didn't have a leaderboard. They didn't have your loadouts were bugged. Those kind of things. Like first of all, how let me give you developers a little piece of advice. Don't ever roll a game out without combat records or leaderboards. We play these games because we want to kill people more than we get killed, and we want to be able to track that progress. The numbers matter, so please stop it. But
Unless we
anyway,
are playing
so
terrible,
this
in which case you can turn that off. We don't need that, until we get back above one.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you on that. But so this next one is going back to that four operator or 4 role system, and I think Creep might be. As we get a little closer, we should talk to Creep about this because I know he's up on the battlefield a lot too. So I'm just kind of going off of what I read. So to have the 4 operator 4 role system, obviously everything is destructible, so that's going to be awesome. It will have that free to play BR, so that's
Mm-hmm.
great. I'm excited about that. So yeah, and I think there's supposed to even be maybe not advanced movement, but it's supposed to be fluid movement, fluid mechanics, and it's going to be current day. So
Good.
there you have it. I can't wait for it to come out, but I don't think it comes out until next year. But I know that they've had all hands on deck, and part of actually EA's reduction in force was Ridgeline, who was supposed to be doing the narrative aspect of this upcoming Battlefield. So now
Hmm.
they've redistributed that responsibility. I can't remember who to, but they did.
Creep, by the way, is a friend of the pod. He runs a a Battlefield News Twitter account, and really solid guy. So, Creep, we appreciate you every time you chime in on us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no doubt.
um, so that's going to be an interesting development when they really push that out. I think battle royales. I've said it before, and I just wonder how long the longevity of them are going to be. I think they'll always be around, but I think they're going to come and go in waves, right? I think we're hitting a point where that battle royale fatigue is coming back, um, and it's going to be interesting to see what comes of it, and especially when you look around and you see what is getting popular, right? Like we had Pal Worlds kind of blew up to start the year, and then we have right now, if you want to get into what's really kind of been driving the enjoyment on the timelines, it's when you really want to support democracy and you dive into Helldivers 2, which has me suffering from a bit of FOMO. I'm not going to lie, because it is a PlayStation and PC only game, which kind of has me feeling a little left out. Developers, please port that to Xbox. But
We need to get you on PC, homie.
yeah, we're reaching it. But at least I can still make am I cheating jokes, and nobody believes it.
Yeah, that's true. Because, well, I mean, listen, you can cheat on Xbox, but the likelihood of cheating on Xbox compared to cheating on PC
Much
is very
lower.
slim.
But Helldivers 2, if you've been living under a rock, is seems to be a really wild first person shooter game, Space Marine in a living galaxy, right? So it's like you're fighting against alien invaders on different planets, and it's actually a when you play the game, it actually matters. I don't know if you've delved into it too much, Jay, but it's a really interesting setup because it's a cooperative game, right? Like everybody plays as Space Marines against the evil bad guys or whatever, and it is a really interesting scenario because when you go and you fight bugs on a given planet, what happens is you make progress on fighting them off, pushing them off the planet, right? Or if you aren't doing very well, they can actually take over the planet. And so when you look at the full map, you can actually see in real time where people are fighting and how well they're doing against the invasion. And so when you play the game, like the more you play it, instead of being drawn in through kind of the matchmaking whatnot, it's about getting in there and fighting back against the bad guy as a group, as an entire player base, which is a very interesting take on cooperative play versus every map that you play is not like it has no bearing on the next game, right? Every game is self-contained and standalone, and I think that
Interesting.
sort of added like that sort of gameplay is that perpetual gameplay definitely has a strong appeal. So we've got some extraction games coming up. We've got more battle royales, and I think we're stepping into a new era where people are more willing to accept a game, a game where every time you go in, there's meaning beyond just the game just that specific game you're playing, right? And I think we're going to see. I hope that we are going to see some development and creativity in this space, and really create something that where the matchmaking algorithm is not the determination of how much fun you're having, because different aspects of the game can actually have an impact on your future play sessions, if that makes sense.
Right. Have you seen Skull and Bones?
Yes, I played it. I played the demo.
Yeah, I'm playing that right now. Like when I just want to vibe and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get my blood pressure up because of Call of Duty, I have been going and just playing that. And I think that is the mindset that a lot of people are having, right now because. And we'll talk about kind of the state of Warzone and Call of Duty here in a little while, but I think people are starting to branch out. I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitch that normally main Call of Duty and that's what they play. They're branching out and playing other things, whether it be Fortnite or even some are going into Apex, which Apex is pretty sweaty and has issues, itself. But the point is people are expanding their horizons on what they're looking at as far as gaming goes. And speaking of gaming, there's a couple different ways to game. You can game either on mouse and key and be mouse and key master race, or you can game on controllers. My guy Sub here is he's affiliated with AIM controllers. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as you can tell, the rain has started up here, so we did not make our window on time. But the yeah, so when you want to actually enjoy the game and play with all that Aim Assist has to offer, um, you get into controllers, and it's interesting because so I am affiliated with Aim controllers, but my opinions on them kind of were formed before that, long before that happened. And one of the reasons that I am, I talk so much about it is when you're playing on controller versus mouse and key, there are so many drawbacks to it that you really have to have. You have to be able to overcome those, and that's why getting away from a standard controller for me was kind of a big deal. So eventually, I started out with the Elite Two. Was my first not $60 OEM controller, and it became a constant quest for me to improve the ability of the controller to compete with mouse and key. Because if you recall, kind of early days of Warzone, right? Their mouse and key had some, and especially the early days of Modern Warfare 2019, mouse and key had some significant advantages over controller, and the game was really well suited to it. Right, the HDR was very good, and just the way that people took gunfights at the time. So being able to actually fight on more equal terms in terms of like responsiveness was kind of a key thing. And so when it came to controllers, like I really developed a desire to look for what makes the controller, like, what makes the best controller. And it comes down to a couple of different things, in my opinion. And one of those is trigger responsiveness and having paddles that are responsive as well. So I think the different controllers on the market, there are definitely advantages to a lot of different models out there. I think AIM strikes the balance of providing the best triggers combined with a lot of other pro level features that people want. It's definitely a premium controller, right? You don't sign up for AIM looking for a budget controller, but yeah, it's just testing different controllers and trying to understand what makes a good controller, what makes a bad controller, is really has really opened my eyes to how controllers are constructed and what they're made to do and what they are capable of doing. And I think the experience that somebody has on a basic controller over a high end controller is night and day, right?
So for me, using a controller like when I was using one, I haven't used one in 3 weeks. I liked the weight of like the Elite Two. Like I
Mm-hmm.
tried in between my two Elite Twos, I tried the I think like the Fusion or something,
Yeah.
and it was just really light. How does that compare? Like, is that something that you like in a controller? Like, I just want it to feel solid and substantial.
Yeah. Like I like the weight. So a lot of the weight actually comes from two areas: batteries and the vibration motors. So when you pick up a controller that has, that is wireless and fully loaded, right? It's got a serious heft to it. which people do or don't like depending on your preferences. For me, I'm a knee rester, so like I'll put my elbows on I rest my elbows and then hold the controller, so that's usually my preference. But some people like to free hold it completely, and so the weight for them is important. Um, and that's one of the benefits of a custom controller is you can remove all those, remove the stuff you don't want. Like the Elite Series 2 was unfortunate because the batteries were built in, so you didn't have a choice on it, right? You had to heft the batteries. Like I take the batteries out of my controllers, right? I don't want them. I don't want
Well,
the
yeah.
wireless signals messing with. Because I play wired, I don't want the wireless signals messing with anything. But the not having that top heavy weight it helps kind of strike the balance a little bit, in my opinion.
Well, and I was always told, so I used to play wireless, right? But then I was told to don't do that because there is like a latency difference
Mm-hmm.
between being wired versus, shooting what you're doing through a signal. And that makes total sense to me. I don't know why I didn't think about that on my own. So I would always plug mine in. And, in
Yeah.
fact, I'm going to need to probably take it out, um, and just put it away. But my Elite 2 is still plugged into my PC right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked playing wired. I actually could tell just a little bit of a difference in some aspects. But let me ask you, as far as like the thumbsticks, that was the other reason why I liked the controller that I used. I liked being able to have the tension on the thumbsticks because for me personally, I tend to get happy thumbs if I'm surprised or in, like a quick close quarters engagement. And I
Yeah.
liked having that tension on the thumbsticks and being able to adjust that. Are you able to do that with aim controllers?
Aim controllers don't have adjustable tension that way, and so here's the thing with that. With the adjustable tension is, um, the mechanisms do wear out over time. So you actually are going to over the lifespan of the controller probably lose some of that tension. And the problem is you're not going to probably notice it because it's so gradual, right? So I think a
Sure.
better solution than adjustable tension is actually the control freak rings, because you can control like you can create the same effect, the same tension um, effect with the ring. If you don't know what those are, they're basically small rings that fit around your thumbstick, and then they're made of foam, different densities of foam depending on how stiff you want it to be. And basically, it just like adjusting the tension, it increases the stiffness so that if you get the happy thumbs, you get that resistance, and you don't go as wild. And so they can help you control your ability to aim and have that fine-tuned control without going crazy. So big help. A lot of people, you'll see them around. They're like 12, $15, really easy
Yeah, on
purchase at the
Amazon.
end of
My
the
kid
day.
has some.
Yeah, easy peasy.
So
um
the other issue that I had with my Elite 2 was the right bumper, and it was always the right bumper, going out where it's unresponsive. Do
hmm
do you how do you feel about aim controllers, right bumpers, and their overall like warranty and repair process and things like that? Tell me a little bit about that.
So Elite 2 is notorious for their bumper mechanisms failing. I have a buddy of mine. I sold him my second Elite 2 after I switched over to the Razer controller, and his bumper failed after like 4 months. So it would have been my bumper
Kind
that
of
failed.
frustrating.
So I mean,
Well, it's frustrating. You're in a fight
yeah,
and you're trying to nade, and it's not
yep,
responding, and you're like, "Grr, grr, grr, grr," you know.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it comes down to the mechanisms. The Elite 2, I don't think the build, it feels good, but I think the build quality of those is lacking. The quality control is not there. And I think that they are, I mean, that design is what, 5 years old now, 6 years old, something like that. I can't remember
Yeah.
how old it's been. Maybe older. And it's they haven't changed it, right? Which is fine, right? It is what it is. But I think I believe there's an Elite 3 coming out in the next year or so. and hopefully they'll rectify a lot of these problems. But to be honest, like it's not a very good controller. I don't think, in my opinion, in terms of like quality and stuff. It has a lot of features, and if you're coming from a standard controller, it is night and day. But it still uses mechanical. So here's the thing with bumpers and triggers, right? That aim control, and there are many controller companies that do this, so it's not just aim. Razer controller does it, Battle Beaver does it, Scuff does it. So I personally prefer the aim controller, but there are many alternatives out there. Um, is they don't use the same mechanism. So like usually the controller, but the controller is like a hinged lever, right? And then the buttons are these hinged levers, especially the bumpers and the triggers, and then there's like a sensor that detects when you push the when you push it down and release it. And so the responsiveness isn't great, right? Versus what aim controllers does is they actually switch to a digital micro button, so effectively a mouse button, a mouse click
Mouse click.
button over
Okay.
the traditional controller kind of lever system, and it makes the responsiveness really good when you get the clicky button. It's the responsiveness is going to be much better. Razer had it as well, which is why I switched off of the Elite 2. Um, but one of the nice part, honestly, the thing that makes me excited uh, about the aim controllers is they do lifetime warranty on all of their parts. If it's their parts, like modified parts, lifetime warranty. So if you have the digital bumpers and the bumpers go out, send it back. They'll replace it for free.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That right there tells me that they stand by their craftsmanship. And I mean, frankly, I got to say this, knowing you, as I've gotten to be able to do since, in the last almost year or whatever, I know that you've done extensive research on the different controllers that are on the market and tried different things. And the fact that you landed back to AIM says a lot to me about just the company and the brand and the quality of their product. So, that, and on top of our friend Cap, just, Caps Locks just got a sponsorship deal with AIM
Yep.
controllers, which is fantastic. So, I mean, things seem to be looking up for AIM for sure.
Yeah, and I think they're one of the nice parts about that company is they're a pretty small company with big potential, and they've put a lot of effort um, into being responsive to their customers. Right, I know a lot of people have issues with different companies, and I've had issues with other controllers as well, like and I've had good experiences like Razer, their controllers. I've had a couple of them, and some of them have developed issues, and they took care of me, so I don't have a problem with I'm not saying it's exclusive to AIM, but their service and their willingness to try and take care of people, I think, is really solid. And they just ventured into Hall effects joysticks, so this is another one of those technology bits that I think we'll see more of going forward. It's not a miracle technology, but I think it solves a big problem. So if you're not familiar, a traditional joystick, right? Like for those of you who are watching on YouTube, like when you move it, there's basically a mechanism inside the joystick, and what it does is as you move it, as you move the joystick, it has an XY sensor, X sensor and a Y sensor, and there's little components in there that move. Like when you move the joystick, you're moving the components, and then it measures the resistance between the sidewall and that component, right? And so the more you move it, it changes the resistance, and therefore the controller knows where that joystick positioning is. The problem is it has moving parts, and it's susceptible to damage and dirt, right? So as dust and stuff works its way into your thumbstick, it can interfere with the movement of those parts, dropping the controller, or just general use, to be honest. can actually wear those parts down so that they stop being responsive, and it creates what we call stick drift, right, where it loses 0 on the controller, and then actually ends up believing the 0 is off center, and so your controller then starts moving on its own. Which, to be honest, if you're playing Call of Duty and you want that rotational aim assist, a little bit of stick drift is actually really good because that helps you.
Let me ask you this: do you think ever in time that controller technology, specifically for the thumbsticks, can get to a point to where aim assist is not really needed? Because I mean, the whole reason you need aim assist is because controller joysticks don't respond in the same way that mouse does. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So do
that's
you
the
think
big
that there'll ever
the big
be a
one.
technology where aim assist won't be as relied upon from controller players?
I think they've tried different ways, and there's a PlayStation has a gyro sensor in it, and so you can actually roll the you can set it up where you can actually move your controller, and that'll actually do movement, right? And so you can so like kind of like the Wii, right? You can just rotate your hands, and that
Yeah.
will change the controller. And from people that focus on it, I think that's they say it's very good and responsive. And that mode does not have aim assist, and so I think there are other ways. But at the end of the day, especially for casual players, which is the main base for a game like Call of Duty, I don't think you're going to see a desire to learn an entire new control scheme, right? And learn to move your hands and move the controller in 3D space, in addition to moving the thumbsticks while you play, right? I think that if that sort of thing becomes like the best option or like the only option, I think people will gravitate to other games because it just requires a whole nother stage of learning that most people don't want to do. So
Well,
I
and
don't
if
know.
we've
I mean,
established
we'll
anything,
see.
it's that people won't take the extra time to learn something new, like you
Yeah,
just said.
but the thing that AIM did, and this is not a new technology. It's been around. I think it's been about 10 years that it's been kind of being used in controllers, but it's just been a cost prohibitive thing. It has been what are called Hall effect joysticks. So basically, it uses magnets, stationary magnets in the thumbstick and in the side housing of the controller module to measure the movement of the thumbstick. And so the benefit of that is it doesn't have those moving parts that will eventually lose 0. So it always just returns to it'll always return to the correct 0 positioning as a unit. And so it more or less prohibits stick drift from developing in a controller, which is really good. I think that's a huge positive moving forward, and I think we will see as that technology becomes more mainstream, that incorporated in more OEM controllers, both on PlayStation and Xbox, which is going to be a positive. So that's a new technology coming out, and so AIM has kind of jumped on that, and they're one of the bigger. They're probably the largest custom builder to incorporate them right now, which is good, right? Like that's what we want to see, and it'll pressure other makers to delve into it. But right now, I think they're still like $10-$12 a unit for each thumbstick compared to a traditional thumbstick unit, which I think is 89-90 cents, to give you an idea of why this technology we're not seeing very often.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime there's new technology, it seems like it costs a lot more when it first comes out, and then gradually
Yep.
over time, the cost
Yeah.
gets reduced. So does your controller that you play on right now have that technology,
No.
or are you looking to
No.
get one that does?
Well, right now it's only coming out for the PlayStation 5 controllers. Unfortunately,
Okay.
Xbox doesn't do enough volume with AIM to Xbox controllers are more difficult to work on. They're more locked down from a hardware standpoint than the PlayStation controllers are, which is weird because Sony is very protective of controller of what third parties are actually able to do, like to build for them, right? They are very
Sure.
expensive to partner with, and they don't let anybody, like they only let Razer, and have they let Turtle Beach in? There's only like 2 third party controller, like like licensed controllers for PlayStation, which is wild to me. Versus
Is it
Xbox,
Scuff?
which the is it? No, because Scuff modifies an OEM controller,
Okay.
just like AIM does. It's Razer has one. There might not. I'll have to double check, but yeah, it's like there's no. You look at like Xbox and you get like Turtle Bay, and you get PDP, and you get people make controllers like $25 controllers, right? Like they're just out there, and it's like, oh, all right, it works, and you just don't see that with PlayStation, which is interesting from a business. I mean, good for Sony from a business standpoint. It means they get to collect all the money because they make it, but from a consumer, it's kind of a pain. But yeah,
Sure.
they do have their controllers are. So it's interesting when you get into their controllers. There's a lot more you are allowed to do with an OEM PlayStation controller versus an Xbox, right? You can overclock the PlayStation controller.
Mm-hmm.
They have the gyros on it. They have the touchpad on the front. There's just a lot there, and it's easier to work on. So definitely a more popular controller base. I unfortunately, unless I get some kind of controller adapter, am left out of that. So that's unfortunate. Another reason to
Interesting.
have
You
to
got to
buy a
figure out a
PC.
way to. Think about this. For what you do, if you do get on a PC, it will allow you to test a lot more things.
Yeah.
You'll have the PlayStation side of it plus the Xbox side of it. So, that might be something, you know, to consider, or definitely one of the benefits for when you do get a PC, because I think there's a lot of people that are going to want to know, what your thoughts are on the full line of controllers. And for those of you,
Mm-hmm.
that have been listening, obviously you can tell if you have any questions regarding controllers, or there's something you need to know. Sub One is a fantastic resource to go to. He obviously knows his stuff. And AIM is a great company to take a look at as well. I'm sure their
Yeah.
website has
Appreciate
got a
that.
ton of resources on it.
Appreciate that. But there's another controller coming up that we're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to start testing on, and we're all gonna have to start messing around with. And that's our phones. As Warzone is getting ready to release Warzone Mobile back to Verdansk,
Mm-hmm.
allegedly. The 21st of March is what they've told us. We'll see.
Sure.
I will put my trust in that date on the 21st of March when it comes out, because it's been a year and a half, so I'm a little frustrated that it's taken this long. But from what I hear, it's a fun game. The experience is solid, and you can take it with you, so you could play on the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I could. I don't know how much of it I'm going to play. I mean, it is awesome that it's going to Verdansk. You know, I haven't really gotten into mobile gaming. I mean, I game enough on my PC and when I was on my console. But like you said, being on the road, it might be something worth looking into. And I'm sure you can Bluetooth a controller onto your phone so you can
It
still
has
play
native
on
controller
controller.
support. Yep.
Yep.
Um,
And one of the other things though that is a benefit of it is cross progression is supposed to be fully live. I guarantee you there's going to be some kind of bug for that to start off with. I mean, listen, that's complicated, right? That's not,
yeah.
look how long it took EA and Respawn to give people cross progression from Apex, for people who went from console over to PC. It took years. There has to be a reason for that. And I don't think that's all profit driven with store stuff. I think that it was a little more complicated than people think it is. And, hopefully, Activision and Call of Duty has that, under control or has a plan for that. But being able to rank up weapons while on the road, sitting in a hotel room is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
To be able
or
to do
even getting
that. And
to jump in and just play some.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
know
of
you're
course. And
gone.
I
You'll be
wonder,
gone for 3-4 days at a time, and we've had conversations about this, but I mean that'd be an opportunity that you and I could hop on and play.
yeah, well, that's the other thing I was going to ask or say is I wonder how the squad, like if being able to squad up is going to be the same, or if it's just a random experience. Also,
No,
comms, how are those
it's
going to work?
squads. Yeah, full squads, Bluetooth headset for comms.
Bluetooth
So from
headset.
hmm or if you plug in a headset, right? Like whatever your standard is, I believe it's supported.
What's that device that I saw that someone put on their phone to make it like a controller, almost kind of like the Switch?
So the Razer, so I have one, but I can't use it now because it uses the Apple switched to the USB-C, so now it's kind of a piece of junk. But it's basically a controller that plugs into your phone. Like it's a mine is a Razer. There's a couple different companies, and basically what it is it's a set of it's basically a controller split in the middle. So thumbstick on either side, buttons, triggers, all that, and then it expands out, and then like it wraps around your phone and plugs in. I use that, and I was playing COD Mobile with it, and it's really good for that. For the experience, I will probably actually Bluetooth my one of my aim controllers to my phone to play, just because the triggers and the back paddles and everything are much more responsive than that device. And they actually make little clip-on devices that will hold your phone or hold your screen up to it. But here's the other thing about especially if you have a new phone, a newer iPhone. So I have the what I don't know, what is this thing, the 15, the new one.
Yeah, I
And
think it's
what's
15.
cool about this one is the it's a USB-C, so I can actually USB-C to my monitor. So I can set my phone up and play on my monitor at full resolution off my phone.
You you could probably stream that too if you set it up right.
Oh, yeah, I'll just plug it into my capture card from the phone, like 100%.
That's
I've
interesting.
already I've
I
already
Yep,
pulled up tutorials on that, so I know it can be done.
of course you have. Hey, listen, that's awesome. I'm not sure how much of the mobile I'm going to play. I'll probably give it a try. I'm already kind of freaking out as far as like trying to make sure I remember like all the passwords I'm going to need to get that set up. Like I'm the absolute worst at that. The absolute
Yeah.
worst. I got passwords for everything, work, home, all that stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
I could get that squared away. But I think it's going to be very interesting just to see the level of popularity of it and how many people who've never really played or streamed mobile go to mobile just simply because of Verdansk. And the other thing that I'm curious about, though, is okay, so if your weapons all progress, your camos, all that, do your
Yep.
statistics? Like, so all that's going to cross reference the combat
I
record?
believe it'll have its own combat record.
Okay, so it's separate.
Yeah, it should be separate, right? Like it'll be mobile, Warzone mobile. But here's something that I think is going to be really interesting. You aren't going to be able to load cheats on there.
Yet.
It's well, yeah, Android. Hopefully it'll be an iPhone. You'll be able to turn off iPhone Android crossplay. But
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
but
Well,
if
I'm
you're
serious.
on if you're on an iPhone, you're not going to be able to really load an engine owning rootkit or something like that. They should be able
They have that
to.
locked down, bro.
Yeah, you should be able to have a relatively cheater-free experience especially if you're Android folk. Android, we'll see, but on an iPhone for sure, you should be able to lock that down and prevent that from
You
being a
know,
thing.
it's funny you mentioned the cheaters and just the
Mm-hmm.
overall cheating situation. That kind of takes us into just kind of the current state. But our buddy Caps Lock, who was on 2 episodes ago, came out with a really great video. Why don't you tell a little bit about your thoughts on his video, and I'll just add in what I can.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, if you spend a lot of time reading forums and paying attention to what's going on in the cheat market, a lot of stuff doesn't surprise you anymore. So there was like a lot of what he was talking about is kind of like a lot of people already knew, but a lot of people had no idea. And so it was interesting to see that video. I thought it was the level the level that people go to cheat and be undetected through various methods is just continues to astound me that people put that much effort into it. And it really does make the anti-cheat feel. It really does make the anti-cheat look like it doesn't do anything. I mean, we know it does. We know it's there. We see people getting ricocheting, and some of us. I'm not saying everybody has, but I've been in games and watched people get live banned, and just like boop gone. See ya. And so that feeling, that is there. We do know it works, but it's just so easily circumvented right now that it's kind of frustrating. And I think the whole community is just fed up with it and frustrated. So, Caps's video was, I thought, really well done. I know he's got some more content coming up. I've got content coming up related to that as well. Um, and for those who don't know, we talk to Caps a lot. The three of us, we have a group chats. We chat about different topics and share information back and forth. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And I think his video coming out has been phenomenal. A really phenomenal look at kind of a cheating from like a professional cheater's perspective. I've got a video coming out, a short series coming out starting next week, from kind of like what I would call your average cheater's perspective, right? Like, and his insights into why and how and what it looks like for him, and some really interesting tidbits on why you should absolutely have multi-factor authentication on your account. If you don't have that, please do it immediately. We'll
The other
wait while
thing
you
is,
set that up.
yeah, did you see the Charlie Intel tweet where where it was about the screen caps that Ricochet would try to do, and apparently one of the cheat providers is able to sense when that's going to happen, go black, and then turn right back on after that.
They all do that. That's been so. The Warzone launched with an anti-cheat, right? It had an anti-cheat. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And that's how it worked, right? You reported someone and it screen capped it, or it violated. It triggered the anti-cheat, and it would screen cap, right? And then that's how they would do it. And they learned very quickly that was going on, and they could detect when it was coming, when it was happening, and they would. And that system has been around for years, right? But it's one of those things of like this is one of those things where people don't know, right? They don't know what they don't know, so everything is new. Everything is like mind blowing that exists, even if it's been around for a long time. And that's the problem with that's why what Caps did and what I'm trying to do and what some other people have been doing is so important. We all see the clips of the idiot that leaves their red boxes on when they go live on stream, right? Or the spin botters on the back of an ATV driving around just knocking people down left and right. Like, we all see that. We know that exists. But that's where it stops for like 90% of the player base, right? And that's why there are people out there who create videos allegedly accusing people of cheaters. I'm not going to name their names. We all know who they are. And that's why that those people are able to get away with what they say and promote, because nobody knows what the cheats do, what they look like, how they work, and what to actually look for in a cheat. They just have people out there saying, "Oh, look at this guy's aim assist didn't lock on to his teammate. He's a cheater." If you know, you know.
Right.
And it's one of those things that I think that we need to educate ourselves and then educate the people around us as what cheats are, what they look like, what they are capable of doing, and what is likely a cheater and versus likely skill. And a lot of times, you know what, you're not going to be able to tell from looking at a clip, right? You have to watch for a while, and you'll see the little things, and sometimes you'll see the little tells. But if you don't know what you're looking at, then you don't know, right? Like, then everything can be a cheater or nothing is, right? And then you get on and you watch somebody's video where they spectate someone and they say, "Oh," or they pull bits from a stream and they're like, and that's cheating, even though you've never actually watched someone play mouse and key.
Oh yeah, that one clip that was going around for a while, and there's different things you can do. I'm learning, being on mouse and key, that having just like a normal mouse pad or even a normal mouse with normal skates on it, like there are things you can do, that make your tracking and just being able to flick and snap a whole heck of a lot better. Have you ever heard of a glass mouse pad?
Absolutely.
Yeah, people are using glass mouse pads, and apparently that's better for precision. But I'm going to go ahead and say it though. The thing that you are doing and the thing that Cap has done has been far more valuable and useful for getting the word out about cheats and, putting pressure on the Call of Duty anti-cheat than any of those hacker hunters or even some of the people that we know that just throw out accusations on Twitter all the time. Like, because honestly, that's not helpful. It just isn't. Because you get to a point to where nobody wants to actually listen to you. Like, it's the boy who cried wolf. I mean, dude, 2 weeks ago on a video where I was kind of showing my progress on mouse and key, I got accused by 2 different people of cheating. Holy hell. Like,
well,
dude,
I remember you told that one guy, "Just watch me for a minute," and then he did. And he's like, "Okay, you're not cheating. I just suck."
Exactly. Like, I mean, come on, bro.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of where we are. But I think that what you guys have been doing is good work. So, I thank you. That. I think the Call of Duty community should thank you too, because if anything, if that, they always say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So let's keep applying pressure. Again, I've stated this several times. I don't see cheaters all the time like some of you do. And a lot of it, I think, is just lobby server specific, those kind of things. But what I am seeing now is a ton of low-level accounts. I mean, that are just playing like absolute demons. I'm talking level 40s, level 28s, those kind of things. So, honestly, I'm just flagging those and let Activision do what they do, or Call of Duty do what they do with the anti-cheat. Because at this point in the game's life cycle, you shouldn't be a level 40 or level 28. No way.
I mean, look, there still are people out there who are just coming back. I mean, I know a couple of folks that came back late because they took Modern Warfare 2 off, right? And so that's like, now they got to fight back through they got to fight through all the low level BS to kind of catch up to it. Who was it was asking me? A streamer buddy of mine, Dylan. He's been on Apex for the last year and just came back like 2 months ago. So he's, he was in there like it. So I don't want to say that everybody is cheating, but there's a high percentage of low level accounts that know a little too much about the game and how to play for the ratio of those accounts to actual like legit players, right? Like, it's a little weird. So,
well, and I don't think that those are all secondary accounts, right? Like people, just having, I forget, what do they even call those? For whatever reason, I can't
Smurf
get that out of my head. I don't think they're Smurf accounts. Like, Yeah. We did
So
that in Rainbow Six. We did that in
mhm,
Blackout because we ended up, once they turned off the prestige thing, we created new accounts because we wanted something to grind for.
yeah,
So we did that. But here, I honestly don't believe that's the case. And I've said it before, Sub. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that no one is cheating, but I'm also not going to sit here and say everyone is either. But I'm
yeah.
just seeing a lot of sus shit right now.
Well, and I think that leans into the the state of Warzone right now is it is overrun, and it's overrun in a way that, unlike when it was overrun in Verdansk, where it was like you knew someone was just rage hacking because they just, snapped on everything and spin botting and all that nonsense, right? Like that was obvious, right? Right now, they've gotten, Ricochet is to the point where if you were obvious like that, you were going to get caught eventually, and usually within a day or two, right? Like you're going to be burning through your account that quickly. And so people are more subtle, and that's one of the things that I'll be, Caps's video did a very good job of showing, and mine will show as well. My next video is going to be really focused on what it really looks like, right? So I had the opportunity to spectate somebody who was a cheater who did have cheats on, and I could see, he shared his screen with me, so I could see his menus and settings and how that worked. And I think from a regular player's perspective, it's probably going to shake whatever faith you have left in the state of the game right now, unfortunately. But
Right.
I will say this is, when you see those accounts, those low level accounts, it's a business. You buy you create an account, you level it up, you spend $4 on a fake phone number, and then you get it to a certain point and you can sell that account, right? Like that's why they make it. So there's a lot to be said about that, and I don't think your opinion, I don't think, is wrong, right? And I'm not saying you should spam report everybody, but if somebody's sus, you should probably flag it. Worst case scenario, we'll overrun. If everybody does it, you overrun the whole reporting system, and they have to go in and fix it and improve that system, because otherwise, no one will get to play the game. Everyone will be shadow banned, or everyone will
Right.
just be shadow banned, and we all, we go back to random matchmaking lobbies because everybody's in them. Hey, there's a lot of
That'd be a shame.
there's a lot of ways we could win.
Right. Well, and the other thing too, I want to bring up, we are not a podcast that's centered around cheating. The only
Yeah,
reason we're covering this is because lately, I'd say the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, it's been at the forefront of a Call of Duty Twitter, and it has become a problem that has gotten out of hand. And it is
yeah,
newsworthy. So we will cover things that are newsworthy at the time. We're not just going to sit here and focus on cheating. That's not what we built our podcast around, and that's not going to be our sole source of content moving forward.
yeah. Yeah, and that's not something that we're going to dive into too much. So, but it is a we like to touch on the state of Warzone, and right now the state of Warzone is it feels overrun. It feels like it's out of we're getting back towards the Verdansk days where you run into somebody every single lobby or every single day. You're running into a couple, and I think it's bad for the game, and it's frustrating when this stuff goes on and it exists, and it's even worse when it goes on undiscussed, because then that's where some of these more unsavory characters flourish with their accusations and their kind of like 2-bit attempts to discredit people. And I think that needs to be dealt with head on, and that's the best way to handle it, is to just be upfront with it, blatant about it, call this stuff out, identify the problems, and then pressure them to fix it, and fix it in a meaningful way. And so, we have a part to play in this. We're not going to dwell on it too much more than this, unless something drastic happens, in the next couple of weeks. But, it's worth talking about because it is dominating the state of the game, right? So when it's like, how is Warzone? Well, it kind of sucks to play right now. I'm not gonna lie. I've been frustrated, and it's like, I've seen too many people get just 180 all dome shots and stuff like that. Just it makes it no fun, right? For the rest of us.
So I think the way I'm feeling is for a little bit of a different reason right now.
Mm-hmm.
And before I get into this, yes, I know I'm on a new input, but I can tell you playing multiplayer actually feels better to me than playing Warzone right now. It's a little bit of a better experience, believe it or not. I prefer Battle Royale, obviously, over multiplayer, but to
Mm-hmm.
me, the biggest thing right now is that's making the game unfun is you have, and I've mentioned this before, predatory matchmaking practices, but then you have like just none of the guns feel good to me. Like there's no guns that are just fun, and
Mm-hmm.
so the biggest thing being the matchmaking, but the other thing is too is, and you and I've had this conversation before too, right? Like and before I get into this, there are some good things about the game. I'm not just going to sit here and crap on the game because I want to like the game. I want to have fun playing the game. But the big map, there is no distinction right now between a battle royale and resurgence other than player count and map size. Like I
Mm-hmm.
see no difference between the two. Like I should not be having games where I'm being bought back 4 or 5 times. And before you want to come at me and be like, "Oh, get good, scrub, whatever," eat a dick. I mean, it just sometimes shit
Well, there
happens.
goes our not explicit warrant flag on this episode.
Oh, I don't. Do we even get those?
No, we're fine.
But
Um,
but no,
yeah,
it doesn't feel any different to me.
yeah. Well, even the buybacks, right? Like, I'm okay. Warzone One had buybacks. You could buy back somebody all you wanted, but it required a lot of effort, right? If you wanted to buy somebody back, you had to go and collect cash, then get to a buy station and hit the buyback. And so it carried risk, right? Like, if you wanted to go and buy somebody back, it took effort and risk. And what they've added since then is, besides buying somebody back from a fixed buy station, now you have portable buy stations, which I'm okay with, because it creates a point on the map that everybody can see it exists and everybody can see it coming. You've got the green smoke, you've got the drone coming in. I think portable buys are a great way to get somebody back, because it just is another it's another risk factor that you take on, in addition to having to find the cash. But then you have gulag tokens, right, where you can have multiple gulags. You have immediate redeploy packs. You have gulags that give you second chances. Um, so you can literally have you can you can get into a gunfight and then have three straight deaths, right? And then be bought back a fourth time, right? So you could die to somebody in game, lose a gulag, get a second chance gulag, lose that gulag, and then your teammate can buy you back, and now you're on your fourth life in less than 2 minutes in a
Right.
battle in a big map battle royale. And I understand how every one of those individual things is a good idea when it is a sparing reward, right? It used to be, if you wanted a redeploy pack, you had to go and do you had to do the keep, or the, no, what was it called? Um, you had to go do the little castle, and then you had to go get the black site. You had to get the key from the castle, and you had to go to the black site, and you had to kill a juggernaut and a bunch of AI, and then you would
Yeah,
get a
strongholds
redeploy
and then the
pack,
black
right?
site.
Strongholds, right? And it's like, that's a really, really, really high risk and high intensity operation, and you got to fight off other teams doing all of that, right? And the reward is you get a redeploy pack, which is actually, I think, a great way to use it. And now they're everywhere. They just show up out of boxes, right? And so it's like, you can literally have an extra gulag token and a redeploy pack and you know and the opportunity to buy somebody back, like and the flares, the pizza box flares. Can't forget those, right? Like there are so many ways to come back into the game in a very short amount of time that you're right. It does take away from the it takes the risk out of playing the game. Like there's no reason to not treat it like multiplayer resurgence.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a BR. And you know what happens to me a lot is my teammates, get taking fire, running to a buy, gets the buy off, dies immediately, and then I have nowhere else to drop, so I drop immediately into another death. I'm either shot out of the sky or
Yeah.
killed immediately when I land. I have no problem coming back in the game if it's with a purpose and if we're able to, if we're winning some of these games, fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with it. But I have no interest in doing that for 12th place. You know,
Yeah.
that's just kind of where I'm feeling last night. And the one thing I do have to say, and I do owe my friends an apology because it's making me very chippy in some ways. When we're playing, and it's not their fault. They're just trying to play the game too, and it's
Yeah.
more of a me thing than anything else. So yeah, it's just extremely frustrating. Like I said last night, I'm like, if they come out with some kind of BR where you die once and that's it, I will never touch this again. Like, that's how
Yeah.
frustrating this game can be sometimes. Because, like I said, dude, I've had like 2 kills, right? And 2 deaths. And I'm like, okay, that's an even game. I can deal with that.
Yeah.
Nope. You get bought back 2 more times and you just went 2 and 4. You have a 0.5 KD. And anybody who tells you that they don't care about KD is full of it. You don't hop on an
Yeah.
online first-person shooter so you can get killed more than you kill other people. That's just not the way it is.
That's always the goal.
That's yeah, exactly. That's disingenuous. And winning. Now, obviously, ranked play is totally different because they also take out all the other cheese, and you're playing for SR. You're not really playing for kills. But in pubs, I think that also maybe adds to a little bit of the sweatiness factor of it too. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where your experience, I think, tends to. It is supposed to make the casual player enjoy the game more because they don't, as Raven has said, they don't spend as much time spectating. They get to play more. The problem is that in a game like this, the ability to regain is very difficult once you get past like the first or second circle. So, and I think that's where the fault lies, right? Is people are incentivized to be constantly pushing and playing hyper aggressively, which is great. I like playing aggressive. I don't mind the aggressive play style, but the problem is once you lose your loadout in that initial drop, whether you buy it or you pick up the freebie, and you have to drop in and the circle starts to close, right? The speed of the circles and the rate at which you have to move across this map, you are negatively impacted every time you have to regain, because the ability to find the right guns that can compete, to find money, to find all that stuff, it becomes more difficult going forward. And as the circle continues to close, the more that you're brought back into the game, the less likely that you're going to succeed. And so it becomes, as you've pointed out, just a lesson in frustration where you drop in. Well, every POI has somebody sitting on the roof, so you can't drop into a major POI because you'll get gunned out of the air. But if you drop in outside of a major POI, then you don't have any weapons to pick up, right? There's no loot to be had. And it's a balance that that is skewed towards preventing regained. Now, in a 1 or 2 life scenario where you only have 1 life to live, and then if you die, maybe you win your gulag and you get to come back once, the regainability is better, right? Because there are going to be fewer people pushing around. They're not going to be playing quite as aggressively because it does matter. And and teams start to deal with atrophy, right? Like I feel like you are more likely to run into a 4-stack late in the game in this BR than in previous war zones, where if someone dies because they're being aggressive, then the team is down a man. It just is the default. They are just someone spectating, right? And so you get to the later circles and you have mostly broken teams playing. You don't have this, oh, there are 3 full teams in the final circle and then 2 or 3 other, solos or broken teams that are just going to get cleaned up. And I think
Right.
that's what makes the end game less enjoyable, is that the team that rats the hardest is the strongest team. And if they get the circle pull, right, like they will have their loadout weapons against teams that are either broken teams or teams that haven't regained fully. And it's just like, it's not there's not a good opportunity for a solid good fight at the end. It's usually one team will just dominate everybody that's left because they have the gear and the 4-stack that other people don't have.
Right. You know, we were going to talk about the weekly challenges and aftermarket parts. I think we shelve that for next week where we can spend a little
Yeah.
bit more time on it because I feel like we need to. But let's talk about your kill of the week before we close out.
I actually do have a good one. I believe I posted this one. So if you caught it on X and you're bored of me describing it, tough. We were playing Fortune's Keep. I was pushing from the turret, around the turret, or off of the library roof, or the church roof. I don't remember which one. But I dropped down and I had my I killed one. I knocked somebody. There were 3 people down low. I knocked one. Went to finish it. Started taking fire from another guy across the way. Pulled out my XRK while I'm getting hit and flinching hard. Fought the flinch off and just one tapped him. And then escaped and collected both kills at the end. We ended up wiping that team and taking, I think, 2nd place. But it was so satisfying to just absolutely. This guy was hitting me hard and hitting me good, and then with like 1 HP left, I just bring the crosshair down right on his dome, pull the trigger. He gets dropped, and he must have been so pissed off to put that many shots on somebody and then just get one tapped out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I had actually 3.
Ooh.
The first one, I was running multiplayer on Departure, and I've been practicing, quick scoping because on mouse and key, it's that's one of the things that is beneficial for that input. So I've been practicing that, and I was able to get a nice little quick scope 2-piece, mid match. And the reason I switched to my sniper is because I kept getting sniped by somebody. So I'm like, all right, you son of a bitch, I'm going to switch over to my sniper. And so I'm running around with my sniper, and I come around the corner. I see one guy, I quick scope him. I miss my shot on the second guy, but I've been working on, my left and right on the mouse or on the keyboard, my strafing. And I was able to strafe into a spot as well as working on keeping my reticle center, right, and eye level.
Yeah.
And I was able to just bop. And so I quick scoped him. So that was that one. I was bounty last week in Warzone, and this team comes down in a helicopter, and these morons decide to hover. We knock one out of it, and then I have a drill charge, and it's low enough for me to look up and throw the drill charge. You see a guy fall, and then you see the helicopter, and I look up just as it explodes, and we get that one. And then that same day, it ended over back behind Manor. The circle ended over by Manor, and it's the clip starts into circle. I pop one smoke. I see somebody drop on the other side of the circle. I'm able to move over there. Somebody had knocked him. I finish him. Then I see another person drop on the other side, so I go back over there. He kills my buddy, and I chase him. But I hit him with a couple shots, but he got into the water. So I go down under the water, and there's 2 dudes down there. I'm able to pistol one, move over to the side, reload, and then I pistol the other one for the win.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
I actually have one. I have one more I'm going to toss in there. I was playing last night, and I was head to head with a guy who had his loadout gun, and I had the drop in pistol. And man, I just jumped and we were in the crack on keep, and literally just that guy charged after one of my teammates. I jumped down like straight off the chute, landed behind him, jumped in after him, and then just absolutely mopped him with a pistol. And he was cursing something mighty fine when he realized that he was getting domed by me. And I'll tell you this: it is super satisfying to be able to go up against somebody with a good pistol and beat them, and they've got like they've got a meta. I think he had a. He didn't have the MT. I think he had the MTZ 5.56, and I was able to beat him with the pistol. So,
nice,
super satisfying.
I've had 3 boxing matches. And solos
yeah,
get people.
I heard you. I saw you mention that.
Yeah,
very cool.
In one night I had 2. I got my ass whooped on the first one, and then I won the second one, and then the last one was 2 days ago. The guy even dropped me plates, but I still only had 2 plates, and I ended up losing that one. But it was just kind of fun, and that's where I've been having the most fun playing this game. Has actually been solos, but I want to play with my guys. But like I said earlier, I just got to kind of tap the brakes and maybe try to woo-saw instead of getting pissed off at this game, because I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. But
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But speaking of boxing, I've had that before. If you remember Warzone 2, we had the 2v2 gulag.
Yeah.
And I won it with an enemy, right? And so we won the gulag, and like we both spawned right next to each other with our parachutes, and we could talk to each other in prox chat. And I'm just like, hey, you want to box? you want to go fisties? And he did. We dropped in, and of course, like his whole team was there, and they just waited for us to go. And so it was like, I got the knock. They let me full kill them, and then it was like the 3 of them just stood around me, pointing their guns at me, and it was like, thanks, guys. And I'm dead.
Yep. See you at the crossroads.
Yeah, it was fun.
With that is episode 25 of the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. I'm J007TV. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter under the same names, and I'm joined today, as always, or I was joined, as always, by the one and only Sub1KD. Same thing for him on Twitch and Twitter. You can search him up under that. And with that, we'll catch you guys on the next one.
All right. Y'all have a good one.